Hey, what's up everyone? Happy Friday, my name is Matt Peters. For those of you who haven't visited my channel before, I talk a lot about creative media topics, especially photography and video. Today I'm starting a new series called Photography Friday, where I talk about some of my recent photos and how I captured them. So let's go ahead and get into it. So I have two different setups here for two different purposes. This is the Canon Rebel T5 with the 75 to 300 millimeter kit lens. And when I'm doing wildlife photography, this is my telephoto setup. This is the Panasonic Lumix G7 with a Canon FL 50 millimeter lens, and I have a macro extension tube attached. And what the extension tubes allow me to do is decrease the minimum focusing distance. This is for macro shots. Flowers, insects, or anything else very small that involves getting very close. Now I'll go ahead and show you guys some of the photos that I took. So we'll start out with the macro shots. This first one is a wildflower, and I shot this at 1/250th of a second at f8. As you can see, I was going for a lot of background blur, which the macro tube helps a lot. I added a little bit of contrast, a little bit of clarity, dropped the highlights, and embellished the color a little bit. In this second photo, I shot it at 1/250th of a second as well at f11. For this, obviously I used a narrower aperture. I wasn't trying to isolate this one flower entirely. Here's some pine cone shots. I shot these at f8, 1/60th of a second. I kind of like some of the stray light that's coming into the photo. I really tried to bring out the structure and the texture of the pine cones. And this last flower shot was shot at f8, 1/250th. I added a little bit of a subtle vignette there to kind of draw the interest into the center of the photo. As you can see, I focused not on the closest flowers and not on the farthest flowers, but in the middle. We'll move on to some of the telephoto shots. These were shot with the Canon Rebel T5. This was actually the first shot that I took once I got onto the trail. I just laid down and shot this photo at 60 yards away. This was shot at an aperture of 5.6, 1/320th of a second shutter. And this is a different chipmunk. This was shot at 5.6 as well, with a shutter speed of 1/400th. I saw this chipmunk pop out of the grass, and he kind of went and hid once he saw me, so I just sat down and waited for him to come back out of his hole. These next two bird shots were both shot at f7.1 with a shutter speed of 1/500th. They were both focused manually. I don't like relying on the autofocus on my Rebel T5 because the autofocus mechanism in that camera is not the greatest. It tends to miss a lot, especially when there's a lot of branches or other objects in the shot. If I can manually focus, that's usually preferable. And lastly, I'm going to talk about some prom photos that I took recently. I wasn't really posing models for this. I was kind of just tagging along and staying out of the way. I really like how some of these turned out. The first two are of my brother and his date. This is more the kind of shooting style that I'm used to, the more journalistic, candid kind of photos. These were shot with a pretty wide aperture. It was a gray sky outside, which a lot of people don't like shooting with gray skies. I actually enjoy it because it's like a natural diffuser, kind of a natural filter. Flat out sunlight is very harsh, especially for skin tones, and gray skies really help that. You don't really need a diffuser. These were all shot with the Panasonic Lumix G7 and the lens I mentioned before, but without a macro extension tube, obviously. When I'm editing portraits, the first thing I edit is the exposure, and mainly I'm looking at skin tones and white values, trying to get those to a realistic level. Once I have the white balance, the highlights, the shadows all adjusted, then I go in and mess with the saturation and the color balance. The last thing that I focus on is adjusting individual colors. Like, I spent a good amount of time on the magenta values in this photo, getting those pinks exactly the color that I wanted them. And honestly, this particular party of prom goers had a lot of neutral colors, which made it pretty easy to edit a lot of the colors in this photo. The only ones that were challenging were my brother and his date with that deep blue, and you might see some variation in the way that I've edited the blue tones in these photos. So that's it, guys. I hope you enjoyed that. Feel free to subscribe to my channel for more videos like this one.